Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member Graham. It's my privilege to join you today to introduce Kirk Sherriff, President Biden's nominee to serve on the United States District Court for the Eastern District of California. Over the course of his career, he's developed an impeccable reputation in the Fresno legal community for being fair, sharp, and incredibly hard-working.
Mr. Sherriff has shown a deep commitment to public service and the rigor of handling both criminal and civil cases throughout his career. I believe he will be an asset on the federal bench in the Eastern District of California.
I would like to thank President Biden for the confidence placed in me through this nomination. I would be honored to serve in the Eastern District of California, where I grew up and where I've raised my family and practiced for over 2 decades.
Why did you join the ACLU in 2019? Is that right or not right?
So, Senator, I've given small contributions
Which is
starting
fine.
that year, and my understanding is they consider contributors to be members, and that's why I listed it accordingly.
Okay. So I could ask you everything about the ACLU and we'd be here all day. I don't agree with a lot of it. Some of it I actually do. Like the idea of not having police officers in schools seems to offend the ACLU. Do you know why that is?
I don't, Senator.
Does it offend you? You're
well,
a parent.
No, it does not offend me.
A couple years ago, the ACLU of Southern California put out a statement. They said that U.S. policing has, quote, historical roots in slave patrols, close quote. And the ACLU chapter of Southern California went on to say that police presence has, quote, devastating and discriminatory impacts on tens of thousands of California students, close quote. You agree with that?
Senator, I'm not familiar with that letter. I have never seen that letter.
But I just read it to you. You agree with what that letter said?
I don't have information relevant to that.
You don't agree with it, or you do agree with it?
I can talk to my experience in law
No,
enforcement.
sir, I'm asking you if you agree or disagree with the statement of an organization that you chose to join
Right, Senator.
as an assistant United States attorney.
I understand, Senator. I would have to know a lot more about where that comes from in
Another
order to
letter
evaluate
said,
it.
well, you're not doubting that I'm reading it to you accurately, are you?
No, I'm not, but I don't know what the basis for that information is
The
in the letter.
ACLU of Southern California also put out another statement. They said, quote, ICE is not welcome here, close quote. Do you agree with that statement?
Senator, nearly 20 years in my practice in the Eastern District of California, the office has worked closely with ICE.
Do you agree with that statement?
Certainly, in terms of federal law enforcement, ICE is welcome, and we work closely with.
Maybe I'm not being clear. Do you agree or disagree with the statement that ICE should be welcome in California?
I believe that ICE carries out a legitimate
legitimate
function under federal law.
I understand.
I just want to go back to these various statements that chapter has made, and my question is not why did they make the statements. I'm sure that we can look up what the ACLU of Southern California said in which context. I just want to know your own views on it. I'm trying to figure out, do they speak for you on these matters? That's what I'm trying to ascertain here. So here, let's try this again. They have written, the ACLU of Southern California, that that U.S. policing has historical roots in slave patrols and in the forced dislocation of indigenous youth. Now, that's a pretty strong statement. I just want to know, does that represent your viewpoint?
Senator, I do not have knowledge or background in terms of the origins, and I don't know what they were referring to there. I can speak to my experience with federal law enforcement, and I have tremendous respect and have worked closely, respect for, and have worked closely with federal law enforcement who I believe uphold the rule of law and serve the public interest every day.
My question is, do you think that U.S. policing has historical roots in slave patrols?
I'm not aware of that, Senator.
You don't think that it does? What about this? The same letter says that the presence of police has devastating and discriminatory impacts on tens of thousands of California students. Do you agree with that?
Senator, I don't know the context in which what that's specifically describing or talking about.
But in your own experience, I mean, are they speaking for you here? Do you agree with that?
In my experience, in Fresno, in the Fresno division of the Eastern District of California, on balance, I believe that the police, including the police departments, which our office works with closely, and certainly federal and state and local law enforcement, are a positive influence.
Okay, good. Let's talk about ICE for a second, because I know you testified that you've worked with ICE. So the same chapter of the ACLU that you're a member of has said that ICE is not welcome here. They've gone on to say, as part of a package that they devised for children, they released door hangers, posters, and coloring sheets for children that included guidelines for how to use them. The guidelines said ICE agents resort to trickery and deception. Do you agree with that? Has that been your experience, that ICE agents resort to trickery and deception?
My experience, Senator, is with working with ICE agents on cases under 8 U.S.C. 1326 and other related criminal immigration cases, and I have found them to be diligent, hardworking, and ethical law enforcement officers.
Okay, good. So I think we've established that the ACLU of Southern California, at least as to these statements, they don't speak for you. I mean, you have the views that you've just articulated.
My views are not, I'm not familiar with all of the ACLU's views, but certainly I have independent views.
Okay, good. Let me just ask you about this. You've also been a frequent contributor to the group Act Blue. This is a group that, as my colleagues on this panel have emphasized of late, have supported fundraisers with the theme "All Cops Are Bastards." Have you contributed to any of those fundraisers through Act Blue? All Cops Are Bastards fundraisers?
No, Senator.
And does that represent your view or experience with law enforcement?
That does not represent my view of law enforcement.
Okay. I think that those are helpful answers. I think we maybe could have gotten there a little bit earlier with my colleagues, but I'm glad to hear you distance yourself, frankly, from these statements, because I think those statements are pretty outrageous. And it concerns me a little bit that you're a member of a chapter that regularly, and we're not talking about one thing, we're talking about multiple letters, multiple projects, multiple issues over years from this particular chapter. But I'm gratified to hear you say that they do not represent you on these matters. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Sherriff, just quickly, I just want to pick up on my colleague's point here for just the sake of clarification and simple language. You've been asked now several times about your membership and small contributions to the ACLU. Is it fair to say that making small contributions to an organization does not mean you espouse every position that organization endorses?
That is certainly correct, Senator.
Thank you.